Hello, my gorgeous friends. Welcome to another installment of Rooftop Tarot. Well, actually, it's not literally a roof, although, yes, that is literally the roof. But I am on a deck, and that is gorgeous Oregon loveliness here on a beautifully sunny, inspiringly sunny solstice day. My favorite day of the year here in the Northern Hemisphere. So I wanted to come on video today to talk about calibration, which is a topic that I actually have talked a fair amount about. And for some people, when I talk about calibration and calibrating a deck, people are like, oh yeah, I get it, Esty, totally with you, 100%. And for a whole bunch of other people, they're like, what are you talking about? What, what-ish? Yeah, and I wanted to kind of clarify this topic of calibration. I have other videos about it, but I wanted to kind of get to the nub of it. And the nub of calibration is to say that when I am calibrating, I am actually using the tarot cards to teach me how to read other tarot cards. You know, when I do a 2-card reading, and someone was asking me about a 2-card calibration. Most of my calibrations, I mean, I suppose I could do it with more than 2 cards, but really, typically when I'm calibrating one deck using another deck. So I'm usually doing a 2-card reading using 2 different decks. And someone in my Mindful Tarot Facebook group, which, by the way, if you haven't joined that, or if you haven't joined the Mindful Tarot Zooms that we do every month, we've got one coming up this Sunday the 25th. If you haven't joined us, it's free and it's wonderful. This fabulous community. See the details below about how to get hooked up. But anyway, a member of the Facebook group was saying, you know, what's the difference between this 2-card calibration and just a 2-card reading? This just looks like a 2-card reading where you're clarifying one card using another card. A 2-card reading, let's do a 2-card reading. Now I can do a 2-card reading using 2 different decks. I can mix decks. I can have a tarot card and an oracle card. That's not so important whether I'm using one deck or more decks. But a 2-card reading, typical 2-card reading, like any tarot reading, typically, I am talking about my life. I am investigating something about my world, about myself, or about my querent, right? I have a question or a field of inquiry, even if it's really vague, right? So I'm going to do a quick 2-card reading with my newest tarot deck, which is Conrad Stain's Pam A, but in linen. Oh my God. This is like the perfect deck. I love all of Conrad Stain's stuff. He just does impeccable facsimiles and kind of remasterings. His CS tarot is gorgeous. I've featured his decks a number of times, but this Pam A in the linen, this may be it. Cracklebacks is fabulous. And, you know, that make playing cards linen. Oh, to die for. But I digress. 2-card reading. Okay, so I'm just, you know, curious. What does the tarot want me to be thinking about today? That's as specific as I want to be. And I'm going to kind of pick 2 cards with this intention that the first card is giving me the kind of overall nubbin, the overall stuff, the thing, the situation at hand, and that the second card is clarifying the first. Okay? So a 2-card reading where the first card is pointing me in the direction that I should be thinking, and the second card is clarifying. Okay? First card. Okay, 7 of Pentacles. Yeah, I've got a lot of stuff right now that is being nourished and is growing. I have, for instance, I'm doing my first in-person mindfulness retreat. It's actually going to have a little bit of tarot going on at the end of July. I'll have some details below. Here in the gorgeous Mohawk Valley in just 30 minutes outside of downtown Eugene, at a beautiful retreat center called Teepee Village Retreat. I'm super excited about it. And I'm also in that stage where, you know, people are registering. By the way, if you're interested, look below. People are registering, and you know, you when you have an idea, when you plant the seed of something, and then it's like, okay, what's the harvest going to be? This moment of patience and expectation, and sevens in general, that kind of contemplative aspect of the seven, super hard for me. This is a super hard thing for me to do, to just take my fiery nature and kind of be planted. So the cards are pointing me to, yep, this is where you are, SD. And now the clarifying card here. Okay, you need some steadiness. Now, I normally don't think of my husband as the Knight of Pentacles, but I do recognize that in this time in my life, he is helping steady me. Okay, so how do I inhabit this fire of earth? I need my fiery nature to be planted and solid. Okay, so yeah, so the Knight of Pentacles is helping me understand the Seven of Pentacles time, telling me, okay, lean on my husband, cultivate this aspect of myself. Like, what is this guy planting? He might be planting this quality. Okay, so that's a 2-card reading where the second card is clarifying the first. And there are lots of ways to think about a 2-card reading and defining that. My Roots and Canopy reading is a reading like this, or my Face the Wall, right? But when I'm calibrating a deck, what I'm trying to do is not so much talk about what's out there primarily, or not so much address an issue for me or for my querent. I'm actually trying to understand my tarot cards themselves better. Calibration is what we do when we refine our sense of how a tool of measurement or meaning, how that tool helps us understand the world. So when I'm calibrating with tarot, I'm not concerned about what the cards are telling me about the world. I'm concerned with how the cards are teaching me about them. How the cards are teaching me to read them better. And in fact, every tarot reading that I do has that calibrating aspect to it, because the more I use tarot, the better I get at learning how to use tarot. Isn't that true? The more you pick the Seven of Pentacles. Now, the Seven of Pentacles is tied to understanding the ways in which I work with my fire and find patience. So every time from now on, my understanding of the Seven of Pentacles has been calibrated a bit. But I can also calibrate an entire deck, right? So calibration, as I deploy that concept, that method, first and foremost is about helping me get better at using a specific deck, better at understanding a specific card, better at understanding the tarot itself, so that it becomes a more reliable, more usable, more rich and full of meaning tool, more accurate tool for all of my readings. Now, one of the ways I think about calibration these days, one of the ways I talk about it is I talk about how when I'm calibrating a deck, let's say I'm working not with the Waite-Smith, which is a deck that I understand really well. The Waite-Smith is a very reliable source deck for me, a very reliable reference deck for me. It's a deck that I use to calibrate other decks. Does this make sense? Let's say instead of Waite-Smith deck, I've got some kind of Marseille deck. Now this is the augmented Arlecchino's Augmented Arcana, which is this fabulous deck. I'll put information about it below. I got it from, is it Drive-Thru Cards or Gamecrafter, I believe. And it's just beautiful. The color palette, very nice card stock. It's a Marseille style deck, but with this Harlequin thematic throughout. It's based on a Tarocchino deck, which is a kind of smaller deck of cards, of playing cards, than a tarot deck, but this is the augmented version, so it's a full-on tarot deck with some extra cards. And you get a sense of the flavor. This is Marseille style. There's the Five of Batons. There is the King of Cups, right? There's let me add really quickly, the Nine of Pentacles or coins, right? So in working with this deck and with maybe any pip style deck, I'm less comfortable, I'm less familiar than working with a Waite-Smith deck. If I want to use this deck, this particular Marseille style deck, if I want to use it with reliable results, if I want to feel confident, feel like I know how to use this deck better and better, then I want to calibrate it. And I use this word calibration because calibration is the word we use literally when we're talking about measuring tools in the world. If I buy a brand new tire pressure gauge for my car, what I might do the first time I use that brand new tire pressure gauge is I might measure the air in my tires according to the gauge at the gas station down the hill, which is a gas station I've used a lot. I've used their tire pressure gauge a lot. Get a reading off of that. That's my source. That's my Waite-Smith deck. That's my reference source. And then compare that measurement to what I get from my brand new tire gauge. So let's say my brand new tire pressure gauge is like 5 psi different than the one down the hill. Well, okay, that teaches me something about my new gauge, right? My new gauge, the difference between it and my source. Sorry, my husband in the background. The difference between the source and my new gauge becomes instructive, helps me use the new gauge better. That's calibration, where we start to understand a new tool, a tool that's new to us or a little unfamiliar to us, by comparing and contrasting it with a tool that we already are familiar with. So with tarot, my source is always going to be the deck that I started with, the Waite-Smith deck, the deck that I have, 30 plus years of experience with, right? And pretty much any Waite-Smith deck doesn't have to, it can be a Waite-Smith-y deck. It might be, something like, I don't know, it could be the Witch's Garden, it could be a kind of a brand new deck that has elements that are very familiar from the Waite-Smith. But that can be my source. My target is any deck that is unfamiliar to me. So, a 2-card calibration reading, I'm going to start with the deck that's unfamiliar to me. Okay? And again, I'm not so interested in an outside question. I'm actually just trying to understand this deck better. Okay, so I've picked this card. That's the Chariot, I'm assuming. Yeah, is that even the Chariot? Okay, so let's try now to work with this new deck. And I'm going to do now a calibration of it. A 2-card reading that helps me get better at understanding how to work with this deck. So the language that I've been using to talk about this work is to say that there's a reference deck, which is the source, and then there's a deck that I'm trying to understand, which is the target. So going back to the example of the tire pressure gauge, the gauge at the gas station down the hill is my source. It's my reference. The gauge that I just bought, I'm going to keep miming as if I have a tire pressure gauge in my hand. The gauge I just brought is the target. It's the tool that I'm trying to calibrate. I'm trying to understand how it measures the world. What's its specific way of describing the world, How does this target deck, how does it approach the world? How does it help me read the world? That's what I'm trying to figure out with calibration. So, I'm going to pick a card. I am thinking, see, this deck is tricky. I am thinking that is the 2 of Pentacles, but let me just double check to make this exercise work. Yes, that's the Maid of Coins. Oh, okay, the Maid of Coins. So in this deck, there is, it's a little bit unusual with, that's so interesting. The Maid of Coins. There's a Knight of Coins and a Maid of Coins. There's a Knight of Swords and a Knave of Swords. Is there also a Knave of Coins? No. Interesting. Okay, so in this deck, oh, I got it. It looks like, sorry, I'm just reading the little source book. In this deck, this augmented Arlecchino, where there's extra cards and there's some differences, in the cups and in the coins, instead of a knave, you have a maid. In the swords and the batons, you do have the knave, i.e. the page. Okay, so the Maid of Coins. How do I read her? When she comes up, what does she mean? I'm now going to calibrate her. So the next card I pick, which is essentially a clarifier, but when I talk about clarifying cards, I'm talking about cards that clarify in the service of reading a problem, a situation, a state of mind for the reader, for the querent, right? But in this case, I'm not trying to talk about the world. I'm not asking how am I, or this moment, how is this the Maid of Coins? I'm actually just wanting to calibrate the Maid of Coins. How do I read that deck, that card? Okay, so I'm going to pick now for my source deck. And what I get is the Three of Swords. So, I just dropped a bunch of tarot cards. A little Three of Swords moment for my videographer little heart. I'm such a klutz. Okay, so the Maid of Coins. So I might have some ideas about what the Page of Coins is in a Waite-Smith deck, but this is not a Waite-Smith deck. And so whatever I think I know about the Page of Coins, now with this Maid of Coins. So I want to think about how the heartachy moment of the Three of Swords, a moment where knowledge is found, but it's found in a way that is heartbreaking. I think Susie Chang says about this card that this is a moment where we can't unsee what we've seen, a moment of knowledge that we wish. It's like, I can't unsee that. Something has been pierced through, has been cut through, and now I get it. A moment of betrayal. I know something now that I didn't know before, and it's a painful knowledge. There's growth in this moment. But this Maid of Coins, I mean, she's blindfolded, right? Which is interesting. I mean, it's Harlequin, and she's wearing this kind of like Daniel Boone type raccoon hat almost, and holding those coins like she's going to find some balance. There's something about her where she's grappling to balance her understanding of the world. You know, she's grappling with the effort to be firm-footed, like all the coins, to be grounded firmly on the earth. But there is a sense of what she does and doesn't see, a sense of how she does and doesn't protect herself, a sense of trying to find this groundedness, this innocence, this freshness, this page-like quality of beginning and newness and mindful attention to what's at hand, despite having actually experienced some stuff. She's not just holding one coin, she's holding two. So that need to find balance. The Maid of Coins is trying to find balance in a world where she's seen some stuff. She has to find her way. She has to find her footing. So this association with the Three of Swords has now deepened my understanding of what this maid might mean. And as I'm calibrating my augmented Arlecchino deck, what I might do is just continue to do readings of this deck with a reliable source deck like the Waite-Smith, continually pulling cards to help me understand this figure. Okay? Does this make sense? So let's do another one. And I'm going to pause here and pick up my cards. Okay, So we're going to do another calibration, where again, our source deck is the Waite Smith, but we begin with our target. We begin with the deck that we're trying to understand. And I pull a card, and okay, it's always helpful, I think, to get a pip card when we're trying to do this. So this is the Six of Swords. So how do I understand the Six of Swords in this deck? Right? It's, you know, it's a beautiful version of that. We've got these Harlequin figures in the shield, or whatever you call this aspect. It's a 6, you know, that sense of symmetry, that doubling of the dynamism of the 3s. And now I'm going to pick my calibrating card for my source deck, and I get, ooh, the 6 of Cups. Okay, well, that's highlighting the sixness here, and it is evoking that relationship that this card has to a protected past. You know, you've got the children in the garden, and that sense of nostalgia that the 6 of Cups brings forward. And I think that highlights for me the sense of protection here. And again, you know, I'm thinking back to the 3 of Swords from the last calibration. There's a pointing to the swords carve out a space, you know, and in the Marseille style decks, they literally do with the scimitar that creates an opening. So thinking about how this 6 of Swords creates this protected space, a space of imagination and thought maybe. So the 6 of Cups, with its evocation of the past, and also it's drawing forward this notion of sixness, of the qualities of harmony and beauty that 6s bring forward. 6s, you know, are such a powerful number in tarot, a number of balance and harmony, but a harmony that has a kind of dynamic quality to it, a moving quality to it, a cutting quality to it. That helps me understand what is being protected in the heart of the 6 of Swords in this Arlecchino deck, right? This sense of a separate space carved out. Okay, so I can continue to do that, and as I do it, just, you know, repeatedly working to better understand this deck, so that I start to get a sense of how do the swords work in this deck? How do the maids and knaves work in this deck? How do I take what I understand from the Waite Smith, my source, and apply it to my target? So calibration, that's what it's about. It's about using our capacity to understand one part of tarot to help us understand another part. Now, lately I've been talking about co-calibration, and that's even more exciting. In co-calibration, I take 2 decks, both of whom are a little bit challenging, and I designate one as the source and one as the target. The source is usually the one that I'm more familiar with, so in this case, I'm going to use my Ostara Tarot, which is a fundamentally Waite Smith inspired deck, but it's not standard in its imagery, and often the cards come forward, and like the Arlecchino Tarot, I'm like, is this swords? Is it cups? I don't even know where I am in the deck. But it's a little bit more familiar to me than the Arlecchino, because it's reliant on Waite Smith imagery, and Waite Smith is my ultimate source. So I'm now in a co-calibration. I'm going to read both ends against each other, right? In this way, calibration is a little bit like the work of making sense of metaphors. If I offer a metaphor like, my love is a red, red rose, rose is my source, right? I understand a little bit about what that source material is, what roses are. I'm using that source to help me understand the target, right, of love. Whatever I know about roses is now helping me understand what I'm trying to intuit about love. My love is a red, red rose. But in that work of metaphor, actually we come to understand roses a little bit differently too. And isn't that the case? You know, roses now forever are the flower of love. My love is a red, red rose. My source material of roses helps me understand love, but in the work of metaphor, actually source and target read each other. Does this make sense? So I'm doing that kind of work of metaphor. I'm always doing that kind of work of metaphor when I'm doing a calibration, and in a co-calibration, I'm really doing it. Okay, so my target, still the Arlecchino deck. And now we have the Seven of Cups. My source now, instead of being Waite Smith, which would be very straightforward, I'm going to use the Ostara Tarot, which is going to be less straightforward. And I'm going to hope that I get a card that I recognize. But if I don't, I'll just look it up. There's a Fool's app for the Ostara Tarot, so looking things up is easy. Oh, okay, so it's the Page of Swords. All right, good, I recognized it. Yay. Seven of Cups, Page of Swords, source, target. So how does this card teach me about this card? And in the process, how do both of them teach me about each other, right? How does the Seven of Cups help me understand the Page of Swords? Wow. Well, first of all, can I just say, look how the color palette is the same on both cards. That's really interesting. When I'm doing a calibration, I'm noticing things like those similarities, right? I'm noticing the Six of Cups and the Six of Swords in the last example. I'm noticing that sixness that's coming to the fore. Those contrasts and similarities are part of this process. Okay, so the Seven of Cups. So there's something about this masked kind of vigilant figure and this hair. And I think this card came up in a reading for my Facebook page, and someone pointed out something about that animal, which was really interesting, and now I can't remember. But let me just, and of course my iPhone it's such a solstice day that my iPhone is too hot and I can't look anything up on it. I've never even seen that before. It says temperature. Okay, iPhone, we put you down. So I can't go to the Fool's app to get more information, which is probably good. So how is that kind of forward-thrusting energy of this Page of Swords? He's not the Knight of Swords. He doesn't have full command of the sword yet. Doesn't have that fiery, propulsive quality, but still sort of like, I need to do something. I need to move forward. That vigilance. How does that relate to the Seven of Cups? I think there's something about this solitary cup up here that stands apart, that is in the position of standing above, and yet can't actually encompass all that is contained in the Six Cups. So that sense of standing out, but not actually containing all that needs to be contained. That nervous energy that I associate with the Page of Swords, and that is exacerbated or emphasized in this image by this movement forward. And yet, this page is not alone. They have their kind of diamond figure in that hair, or whatever that animal is. What is that animal? Right? Moving ahead, running forward, searching. Look at their eyes. So there's something that we're looking for. There's a sense of being the outlook, the posted sentry, that aloneness that stands guard of the seven, that beholding quality of the seven. And we started this whole conversation with the Seven of Pentacles, that beholding contemplative quality, and a sense of how can it contain what needs to be contained. And that seems to play out too in this Page of Swords, who's ready and looking, but it's not at all clear that they have what they need to fulfill their task. Now, at this point, I would want to look at the guidebook for the Ostara Tarot, which I can't do because my phone is melting, and to say more. But this is the process. I'm in a co-calibration. I'm not just trying to understand this card better, I'm also trying to understand this card better. I'm reading both of the cards against each other. I'm working on both sides of this equation. It's like a metaphor. My love is a red, red rose. I'm learning something about roses and I'm learning something about love. Even though this card is a little bit more familiar to me than this card, in the same way that roses might be a little bit more literally apparent to me than love, but the metaphor helps me understand both sides of the equation. Calibration, it's about getting more familiar with the cards so that they become a better and more reliable tool to read our lives, to measure our hearts and our worlds. That's what calibration is. Okay, we'll see. I've talked a lot. We'll see if this is helpful. Comment below, and if you want to talk with me more about this in person even, sign up for the Mindful Tarot community and start coming to our Zooms. It's free, it's fun, yeah, it's excellent. Thank you all so much for watching, and thank you for your practice. Take good care wherever you are. Hi, driving across town, I just had a thought that I had to share with you guys, sort of a postscript to the calibration video I just made. So, the thing I didn't say clearly is, why does calibration work? In calibration, I'm working with a deck that is unfamiliar to me. Maybe it's a deck from a lineage that I don't work with normally. Maybe I'm a Wakesmith girl and I've picked up a Pip deck or a Marseille-style deck, or a deck from the Crowley-Harris, the Toth lineage. And I'm trying to understand how to read that deck. I'm trying to unlock the intuition in me that actually is the source of all of my knowledge and understanding about tarot. The archetypal sort of collective unconscious, very cupsy world of watery, deep meaning. I'm trying to dive beneath the waters of the moon card. I'm trying to plunge into the knowledge that the high priestess holds, right? I'm waiting to unlock my intuition. And so I randomly pick from a deck that is familiar to me in order to read the card from the target deck, the deck that's unfamiliar to me. And in creating this juxtaposition of something from a deck that I know well, or at least know a little bit better than my target deck, by sort of throwing myself into a juxtaposition of two terms, I force myself to think in ways that are not logical, that are not swords-like at all. I force myself into the waters of the unconscious. I unlock and hone my intuition. And that's why calibration works, at least as I understand it. That's how it helps us. That's how it helps us create ever better tools from our tarot decks. That's how it helps us become ever more adept readers of this miraculous collection of cardboard and ink that we call the tarot. All right, that's all I got for now. I hope that postscript kind of helps. Maybe I've just further muddied the waters, but there you have it. I like diving into these waters with you. All right, take care of you all, and thank you so much for your practice.